Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Laura and today I am doing a tag video. This is the old books tag and it's actually a pretty old tag itself. It was created about 5 years ago by Books and Pieces, so I'll link up her original video down below, but I thought that it would kind of suit my particular type of manga collection. I am going to just talk about comic books and manga. Just sort of to share kind of some of the old stuff that's in my collection, and I thought the questions were really quite fun, so I thought I would share this with you and hopefully you find it interesting. I'm not going to tag anyone though because I don't really know, well, for one it's an old tag, but I don't really know who would want to answer these questions, so if you want to, answer these questions yourself and do this tag as well, and feel free to go ahead and do it. But anyway, I'm just going to get into these questions. Question number 1 is, have you ever bought a book that was made before you were born? Like physically made, not, written before you were born. That's a different question. This is difficult, I think, just because of the fact that I was born before manga were being published in English, so I don't actually have a lot of opportunity to have manga in my collection before I was born, unless you take into consideration Japanese volumes, which I don't. I just don't have any. But I do have one thing that was published before I was born that is sort of related, so I'm going to go with this one, which is the Astro Boy Gold Key comic from 1965. This is not manga. This is actually an American comic. It was made, I believe, without the knowledge of Tezuka. His designs were taken to create this comic, and it is not his story, or really was not created with his approval at all. So it's kind of an interesting piece, an interesting look into manga history, especially the relationship with the North American market, but it's not manga. But it is long before I was born, and it's something I'm really kind of proud to have in my collection. I wish it was in better condition, and I certainly would replace it if I could find it, but really interesting thing to have. Question number 2 is, what is a story that takes place in the oldest time period? Again, this is a really difficult thing. I looked around my shelves and I was trying to think, like maybe there's something from kind of a prehistory age, like I do have Gon, which is dinosaurs, but I think it's actually more modern. I can think of a couple of like caveman characters, but they're, part of different fantasy series, so I don't really think that kind of applies. So I've come down to 3, and I think that they're a pretty good result. The first title takes place in Japan. It's actually Japanese history, but it is a time travel title, so it is going back into history. It takes place partly in the modern time, and then partly in 500 AD, which is the Kofun period in ancient Japan. So it is a long time ago, but it's not the oldest. The next oldest that I could figure out takes place in Rome. It again is another time travel title where the character actually comes from ancient Rome and actually time travels to Japan, and that is Thermae Romae by Mari Yamazaki. This takes place in 128 AD, so a few hundred years earlier than the other title. And the last one is by far the oldest, takes place about 1300 years earlier than the last title, and that is Red River by Chie Shinohara. This is 14th century BC. So it is quite a long time in the past, and if you've been on my channel before, you know that this is one of my absolute favorite titles ever. But again, another title that involves time travel, and I don't know if I could actually think of another title that takes place in an old time period like that that does not also involve time travel to some degree. So yeah, I'd be really interested in hearing if you have an experience with some titles that take place at least sort of like in an ancient world that don't involve time travel. I would like to read those, so let me know. Question number 3 is, do you have a book that was published in the year you were born? No. There are no English publications from the year I was born, as far as I know. I would be very, very surprised to find one. But I do have this, which is sort of like the next best thing. This was actually published in 1995, but the title itself began serializing in the year I was born, so this is sort of the closest thing that I could get. And maybe the reasons why I'm such a fan of Aurelie-chan, because we're actually the same age, so yep. Number 4 is, which book on your shelf have you had the longest? As far as manga is concerned, that would be Wedding Peach, because this is the first manga that I ever bought. So I have had this since it was published in, I believe, 2003. Yeah. In 2003, so this is basically where my collection began, although you know that the first thing that I read it was not Wedding Peach, it was Nausicaa. But this is the start of my collection. Although the oldest comic in my collection, and I don't have very many comics from before I collected manga because I got rid of them all, but I did kind of save this one, which is Archie and visits the Calgary Stampede, which is a local event here, so I definitely wanted to make sure that I kept the one where he actually comes to my city and visits, so yeah, that's the oldest one in my collection. Number 5 is what is the book that you've had the longest without reading. This one might surprise you. I've had this for quite a long time. I've certainly had it since it was in print, and I haven't read it. I don't think I bought it exactly when it was releasing though, so it's not 14 years old, it might be like 12 years old, maybe, let's say. And that is the volume 2 or second series of Magic Knight Rayearth. This was published in 2004, and I've had it on my shelves for almost that long, but I've never actually read it. I have read part 1, I've seen the anime, but I've never read part 2 for some reason, and I genuinely can't explain to you why I haven't done that, because I don't really like having books on my shelves that I haven't read at least the first volume of, so yeah, maybe I'm counting the first part of the series as volume 1, I don't know. But yeah, I haven't read Magic Knight Rayearth, so not part 2 anyway, and I really should, you know, get on that and do that sometime. Number 6 is what is the oldest physical book you own. I've already showed you that Astro Boy comic single issue from 1965, but it's not really manga. The oldest actual physical book that's not a single issue in English that I own is My the Psychic Girl. This is actually from the 3rd printing, but it was published in 1988, or printed in 1988, so it is the oldest thing in my collection. And, you know, I don't know that you could go much older than this. I think there's possibly an older edition in Barefoot Gen. I have heard that Barefoot Gen came out before this. And there are, of course, slightly older single issues, but they're all kind of about the same time as this. So there isn't much older that you can go. In English, anyway. The last question is, what is a book that was written the longest time ago? I have 2 to show you. My oldest manga in my collection is this one, which is a Four Immigrants manga. It is a Japanese experience in San Francisco, 1904 to 1924. It's a biographical account or semi-biographical account of 4 Japanese men and their life in San Francisco, just at that sort of pre-World War I. Fantastic, and I highly recommend it, and I think I said it was my favorite of last year, so I really, really loved it. The other title is this one, which I am under the impression is the oldest Osamu Tezuka title. This one is The Mysterious Underground Men. It was written in 1948. It is more of a children's comic, and it is really bizarre and definitely feels its time, but it is a trip to read, and the essay in it is great. So, you know, I would recommend it as well, but yeah, these are definitely the oldest things in my collection, and I don't know that you can find older things in English. I don't really know that there's much older than this. I think this is sort of what we've got to work with at the moment, but I would love to see more older titles get translated into English. That would be wonderful. Anyway, that was the old books tag. I hope you enjoyed hearing about some old books. You know, if you would like to participate in this tag as well, or you want to try it out for yourself, please feel free to do it. Just let me know down below and I'll go and check it out. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.